The arrogance in Detective Thompson's smirk was unmistakable as he mocked the teenage girl across the interrogation table. Her crime? Claiming her absent mother was in special forces. Impossible, he knew. Women didn't serve in elite units like that. His colleagues chuckled along, watching tears form in her eyes as they dismantled what they assumed was a pathetic fantasy. Then the door opened. The sound of boots on tile. 5 uniformed figures entered, led by a woman whose commanding presence instantly silenced the room. The detective's face drained of color as he realized his terrible mistake. Emma Carter slumped in the uncomfortable metal chair at the Chicago Police Department, her fingernails painted dark purple but chipped at the edges, tapping an anxious rhythm against the interrogation table. The overhead fluorescent lights made everything in the room feel harsh and exposed, especially the large red folder stamped Cyber Crimes Investigation that Detective Michael Thompson kept dramatically flipping through. The downtown precinct had never felt so intimidating. The room was deliberately cold, causing Emma to pull her oversized hoodie tighter around her slender frame. At 17, she had expected many things in her junior year of high school: SATs, prom planning, maybe even her first serious relationship. But sitting in a police interrogation room had definitely not been on the list. "Let's go through this again," Thompson said, his voice carrying that particular tone of condescension he seemed to reserve just for teenagers. "You hacked into multiple military database servers, attempted to breach classified personnel files, and coordinated with known hacktivist groups. That's federal territory, Miss Carter." Emma looked up, pushing her dark hair away from her face. "I told you already. I was looking for information about my mother." Detective Sarah Walsh, younger and the only woman in the room, glanced up from her notes with a flicker of interest. She'd been mostly silent during the 2-hour interrogation, occasionally typing notes in her tablet or whispering something to Thompson. "Your mother," Thompson repeated flatly. "The woman who walked out on you and your father 6 years ago." "She didn't walk out. She was deployed," Emma said, her voice growing quieter but more determined. "Special operations." Thompson exchanged a look with another detective by the door. The kind of look adults give each other when a child says something particularly naive. The type of look Emma had grown accustomed to since her mother disappeared from their lives. "Look," Emma continued, frustration mounting. "I know she's active duty. I know she's stationed somewhere classified. I was just trying to find—" "You were just trying to hack federal databases," Thompson interrupted. "That's what we know for certain." Emma's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. 6 years of questions. 6 years of her father's depression. 6 years of other kids whispering about how her mother had abandoned them. And now this man was looking at her like she was nothing more than a delusional teenage criminal. "You don't understand. My mother is Special Forces. Delta Force." The silence lasted only a moment before Thompson burst into laughter. He actually turned away, beckoning 2 other detectives from outside the room. They entered, curiosity evident on their faces. "Gentlemen, you've got to hear this. Our teenage hacker here says her mom is Delta Force." The new detectives chuckled appreciatively as Thompson continued. "Someone should probably inform the Department of Defense that they've been doing it wrong all these years. Women aren't permitted in Delta Force units. It's literally impossible." "Maybe she's been watching too many movies," one detective suggested, a man with a crew cut and a coffee stain on his tie. "Or trying to sound important," added another, leaning against the wall with crossed arms. Thompson turned back to Emma, whose eyes now glistened with tears of anger and humiliation. "Your mother abandoned you and your father. His subsequent mental health issues are well documented in your school records. Creating this fantasy doesn't change reality." Detective Walsh shifted uncomfortably but remained silent as the men continued their mockery. For a brief moment, her eyes met Emma's, but she quickly looked away, returning her attention to her tablet. "I'm not lying," Emma whispered. But no one was listening anymore. Thompson returned to his seat, closing the folder with a dramatic slap. "Let's focus on the actual crimes committed here. Your little fantasy life isn't relevant to this investigation." Emma bit her lip, fighting back tears. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Not these people who knew nothing about her mother. Nothing about the late-night phone calls years ago when her mother would speak in coded language. Nothing about the sand she once found in her mother's boots, despite them living nowhere near a beach. Nothing about the scars her mother never explained or the nightmares that made her scream in languages Emma didn't recognize. Let's review the evidence, Thompson continued, opening a different folder. On March 15th, you used your school's computer lab to access a proxy server in Romania. From there, you attempted to breach the Department of Defense personnel database. When that failed, you connected with known members of the Ghost Network hacking collective to request assistance. Emma remained silent. Explaining further would only give them more ammunition for mockery. Do you deny these actions? Thompson pressed. No. Emma's voice was barely audible. But I wasn't trying to do anything wrong. I just wanted to know if she was alive. This seemed to catch Walsh's attention again. The female detective looked up, her expression softening slightly. Your mother is listed as active duty Army, Walsh said, speaking for the first time in nearly an hour. Basic records show she's alive. Basic records don't show where she is, Emma countered, or why she hasn't contacted us in 4 years, or why her last letter came from a base that doesn't exist when you search for it. Thompson rolled his eyes. More conspiracy theories. Your mother is probably stationed at some remote outpost somewhere, drinking with soldiers and forgetting she ever had a family. The casual cruelty of the statement hit Emma like a physical blow. My mother is a hero, Emma said, her voice stronger now despite the tears threatening to spill. She serves in ways you couldn't even comprehend. She protects people like you who sit in offices and judge what you don't understand. Thompson's amusement turned to irritation. Watch your tone, young lady. You're already in serious trouble. Adding disrespect to a police officer won't help your situation. Is it disrespect to tell the truth? Emma shot back. The detective with the coffee stain chuckled. The truth about your mother, the female Delta Force operator. Kid, there's never been a female Delta Force operator in the history of the United States military. That's not opinion, that's fact. Maybe in the official records, Emma mumbled. Thompson leaned forward, his patience clearly wearing thin. Let me make something very clear. You're 17 years old, caught attempting to hack classified government databases. The only reason you're not already being processed for juvenile detention is that we're still assessing whether to charge you as an adult. Emma's stomach dropped. Juvenile detention. Adult charges. She had never considered those possibilities when she had begun her search. The interrogation continued for another hour, with Thompson using Emma's fabrication about her mother to undermine everything else she said. Each denial was met with a condescending smile, each explanation dismissed before she could finish. Maybe we should have you psychologically evaluated, he threatened, clearly enjoying the power dynamic. Father with depression, mother abandonment issues, pathological lying. You're building quite the profile. Emma stared at the table, exhausted and dehydrated. They had given her 1 cup of water 3 hours ago, and her throat felt painfully dry. The room seemed to be getting smaller with each passing minute. Suddenly, Detective Walsh's phone buzzed. Her expression changed as she read the message, color draining from her face. She stood abruptly and whispered something to Thompson, who dismissed her with an irritated wave. Sir, I really think, Walsh tried again, her voice carrying unexpected urgency. Not now, Thompson snapped, turning back to Emma. Where were we? Yes, your mother, the Delta Force operator. Tell me more about this fantasy. Emma had stopped responding, tears silently streaming down her face. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. Walsh exited the room briefly. Through the window, Emma could see her speaking urgently with someone in the hallway, someone whose face she couldn't see. The conversation looked intense, Walsh's normally composed demeanor replaced by something that looked remarkably like fear. Commotion began outside. Raised voices, radio chatter, the sound of heavy boots in the hallway. Thompson, focused on breaking Emma, ignored it all. Your mother isn't a hero, he said, leaning across the table. She's just gone, and making up stories won't bring her back. The door opened. Walsh stepped in, her face pale. Sir, you need to stop now. I told you I'm not finished. They're here. Who's here? Walsh swallowed hard. U.S. Army Special Operations Command. They've ordered immediate cessation of this interrogation. Before Thompson could respond, the door swung fully open. Major Rachel Carter stood in full Army dress uniform, her presence immediately commanding the room. Behind her stood 4 other soldiers, 3 men and another woman, all in uniform. their faces expressionless, but their posture radiating controlled authority. Thompson's face transitioned through confusion, disbelief, and finally dawning horror as he realized his mistake. He stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "I believe you've been questioning my daughter," Rachel stated, her voice calm but razor-edged, without parental consent about classified information she could not possibly possess. A senior official in a suit stepped forward, introducing himself as Deputy Director Harrison from Army Intelligence. "The existence of Special Operations Task Force Valkyrie is classified above your pay grade, Detective Thompson. Far above it." Emma stared at her mother, the woman she'd barely seen in 6 years. The woman whose career she defended despite the mockery. Their eyes met across the room, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them. Rachel looked older than Emma remembered, with new lines around her eyes and a thin scar running along her jawline that hadn't been there before. But her posture was exactly as Emma remembered, straight-backed, shoulders squared, utterly unshakable. The coffee-stained detective who had been leaning against the wall now stood rigid, his eyes darting between Major Carter and his colleagues. The other detective who had joined in the mockery had moved away from the door, giving the soldiers a wide berth. Rachel approached Emma, her teammates maintaining position at the door, effectively blocking any exit for the police officers. She placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder, and Emma felt the slight tremor in her mother's fingers, the only visible sign of emotion breaking through her professional composure. "I'm sorry they put you through this," she said softly, then turning to Thompson. "Detective, you will release my daughter into my custody immediately." Thompson stammered, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. "Major, there seems to be a misunderstanding. We had reason to believe your daughter was involved in cybersecurity breaches of classified. I'm aware of what my daughter was searching for," Rachel interrupted. "And why?" "With all due respect, ma'am," Thompson tried again, attempting to regain some control of the situation. "She attempted to access classified military files. That's a federal offense, regardless of her motivations." One of the male soldiers at the door, a mountain of a man with a weathered face, spoke up. "Major Carter doesn't need your explanation. She needs her daughter." Deputy Director Harrison stepped forward. "What your daughter attempted to access, Ms. Carter, was information related to a program that officially does not exist. Female Special Forces operators do not exist in any public record, nor will they ever," he turned to Thompson. "Which is why your mockery of this young woman was not only unprofessional, but dangerously close to compromising national security." Thompson's face had gone from pale to ashen. "I had no way of knowing." "Precisely," Harrison cut him off. "You had no way of knowing, which is why interrogating a minor about matters of classified military operations without proper clearance or oversight was, at best, a grievous error in judgment." Emma watched this exchange in stunned silence. For 6 years, she had carried her mother's secret, never fully understanding it herself. For 6 years, she had endured disbelief and pity from friends, teachers, and eventually her own father. And now, in the span of 5 minutes, everything she had insisted was true had been validated in the most dramatic way possible. The female soldier, standing behind her mother, a woman with close-cropped blonde hair and eyes that missed nothing, gave Emma an almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't friendly exactly, but it contained recognition, acknowledgement. Detective Walsh, who had been standing quietly by the door, finally approached. "Major Carter, I apologize for the treatment of your daughter. Had I known the circumstances. But you didn't intervene when you thought I was lying," Emma said quietly, finding her voice for the first time since her mother had entered the room. "You just sat there." Walsh had the decency to look ashamed. "You're right. I should have stopped it regardless." Rachel's hand tightened slightly on Emma's shoulder. "My daughter will be coming with me now. I trust that concludes your investigation." "Not quite," said Harrison, producing a stack of papers from his briefcase. "Everyone in this room will need to sign these additional non-disclosure agreements. What you've learned today about Major Carter's unit does not leave this room, nor does it exist in any report or digital communication." Thompson looked like he might protest, but one glance at the soldiers still blocking the exit changed his mind. "Of course, standard procedure." "There's nothing standard about this procedure, Detective Thompson," Harrison corrected. Just as there's nothing standard about Task Force Valkyrie. The women standing in this room represent years of classified training, selection, and operations that the public is not prepared to know about. As the officers began signing the documents, Rachel knelt beside Emma's chair. Up close, Emma could see the exhaustion behind her mother's eyes, the kind that comes not just from physical exertion, but from years of carrying secrets. "I never thought I'd see you again," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. "Dad said you left us." "I never left you," Rachel answered softly. "Not in the ways that matter." "Then why did you stay away?" "That's a longer conversation, and not one for here." Rachel glanced at the officers still in the room. "Can you walk?" Emma nodded, standing on shaky legs. As they moved toward the door, Thompson made one final attempt. "Major, regardless of your position, your daughter did attempt to breach classified systems. There have to be consequences." The mountain-like soldier at the door stepped forward. "The consequences, Detective Thompson, will be determined by Army intelligence, not the Chicago PD. Your jurisdiction ended the moment Major Carter walked through that door." "He's right," Harrison confirmed. "This is now a matter of military security. The police department's involvement is hereby terminated." As they exited the interrogation room, Emma became aware of the stares from other officers in the bullpen. Word had clearly spread about the arrival of the Special Forces team, and curious eyes followed their procession through the office. Rachel walked with her head high, her hand still supporting Emma, her team forming a protective formation around them both. In the elevator, Emma finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "How did you know I was here?" "I've had alerts set for any queries about me in federal databases," Rachel answered, her voice low enough that only Emma could hear. "When you triggered them, I came as fast as I could." 6 months later, Emma stood on the porch of a secure house in rural Virginia, watching as her father emerged from a black sedan. The reunion had been complicated. Years of pain and misunderstanding couldn't be healed overnight, but they were trying. Rachel appeared beside her, now in civilian clothes more often than uniform. Her transfer to a training position meant she was home most weekends, more stability than she'd had in years. "You know," Emma said softly, "next time someone doesn't believe me about you, I'm just going to smile and let them think what they want." Rachel smiled. The strongest people I know never needed anyone to believe in them. They just needed to believe in themselves. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Walsh, who had been checking in regularly. This message contained something new, an offer of an internship with the Chicago PD's Cybercrimes Unit when she turned 18. "We need more people who stand by the truth, even when no one believes them," the message read. Emma looked up at her mother, the woman whose existence had been denied, whose service had been mocked, whose sacrifice had gone unrecognized for so long. Some heroes never ask for recognition, but they deserve it more than anyone. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving you were right. It's knowing you never stopped believing in the truth, even when the whole world told you it was impossible. Ani Nizi Bekli Oram V. 2 Asamasina Gekmek Isen.